my God, that was a bump in the road.
Mm.
Okay, okay, welcome to the HVAC Game School Community Weekly Live Call, and welcome back. Like every week, we're here, and the first question that we have is, do we have any questions from the community?
The question would be on regards to the class that we have. Is there gonna be more than one, or just this is a one time only?
You mean the EPA certification?
Yes.
It's well, this is the test run. We have done it in person, and that's actually the first thing that I wanted to take up anyway, is a reminder that we are having our EPA certification boot camp on Saturday on the 25th of January at 10 a.m. and it's about 6 hours. It can go a little bit more or less, like maybe 5 to 7, depending on how many questions and how many people we have. We are limiting spaces to 5 to 10 people maximum. And we want to keep it smaller to see what questions are coming up. But it is a test run. And to get the format fully down, because we've done it in person, but we've never done it as a live call or like in a webinar form. And the original idea was to record it and leave it in the school classroom. But Marvin, who is the teacher, says that he prefers in person because people actually get the chance to ask their personalized questions and get a better understanding of the material. So he
Mhm.
wants to keep it live and he wants to keep doing it every month.
Oh,
So we'll see if it actually happens every month. But we definitely have the intention of making this a recurring event. We might start out not every month. I don't know. We have to see how the format works out and if we have to do adjustments, if we can do the event immediately again in February, because also in February we have the AHR Expo in Florida, where we're headed to learn more about all this cool stuff in air conditioning and refrigeration. So, so that's an extra event that we are going to. We're also planning to have a in-person meetup in San Antonio in February. So we'll see how everything fits into the schedule, but we definitely plan to make more than one of those. Just have to see scheduling wise, but we'll post it in the community and let you know.
okay, good.
Nice.
That's it for the questions.
Okay. Well, now I'm in Texas finally. The winter has arrived, sort of. It's around 32 to 40 degrees, and everybody's calling that their heater is not working, which is very strange because when I do my PMs, I always check that the heater is working. But I guess other people don't check that their heaters are working because technically, if you're doing a good PM and the customer takes care of their equipment, you should not have emergency no heat tickets and calls. Technically, I mean, you might miss something or things might fail, but anyway, it's very interesting. So that's what we're doing, running around like crazy chickens without a head and fixing everybody's heaters, which is interesting and fun. So there we go. But I wanted to take up two topics that I had very recently come across that are top of mind for me right now. One is on refrigeration, actually, where we were working on a walk-in freezer where the evaporator coil was totally frozen over. I think the ice was like this thick. It was like super big, and it took a while to get it melted and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So what we ended up like basically I do my general approach, how I do my troubleshooting calls. Always I read the ticket, I see what is going on. The call was actually not for a refrigeration issue that the freezer wasn't working. The call was for a water leak from the freezer. And it happened because the evaporator coil was so frozen when it went into defrost, it would melt, but the drain pan was frozen over. So instead of going into the drain and going away, it would literally leak into the freezer or on the side of the freezer and then run out into the store, which that's what they noticed. So that's why they called. I talked to the manager when I came on site and I asked, like, okay, what's been going on? Like, is this normal, or like do you have this more often, or like what changed? Because that sometimes gives you indications of what might have happened. And the manager told me that it was already I'm the sixth person there in like 3 months. And I was like, okay, well, I guess there is something going on that somebody before me missed. So I already like changed my mindset on how I approach the call. I'm like, okay, it's not just like one thing, probably. It's something else that's going on that is not very obvious. And the immediate thing that I noticed is that the controller was requesting the compressor to be on during defrost, which in some cases that might work if you have um, a setup where the compressor goes into reverse mode and heats up the evaporator changes, the refrigerant flow changes, and you're basically reversing the flow of refrigerant. So instead of removing heat from the evaporator, you're adding heat from the evaporator. So that helps to melt the ice. But that was not the setup we had. It was just a regular electric heat strips. So the unit was trying to defrost while also cooling down at the same time. So you would never remove all the ice, and it would just keep building up and building up and building up. And at some point, obviously the ice was so thick that it would just block everything. There was no airflow, no drain, nothing going on. So that's the end result of it. But I went through the manual, and why it's like top of mind is because I went through the manual. I looked at all the troubleshooting procedures. I looked at some of the settings, and they seemed off on the controller itself. They are the Emerson controllers with a
Mm-hmm.
little like red digital display and the button where you can push like defrost and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. You're frozen.
And I reset it because
Sorry, you
there's
got frozen. You got frozen when you were telling about the controllers.
yeah, so it's a controller, the Emerson controller with a little either red or green usually,
Mm-hmm.
and they have buttons where you can put it into defrost and all the other settings.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went through the manual, I noticed that some of the set points were off, which that kind of told me that somebody probably messed with settings. And on these controllers, usually there's three different, how do you call it, like data sets that you can program it with. One is for low, low temp, and then you have mid temp, and then you have, I think it's mid temp with defrost and mid temp that has just air over defrost, where there's no heat elements. So there's three different settings that you can use. So I went through the reset procedure and reset the controller based on the low temp environment that we were having.
Mm-hmm.
I followed all the procedures in the manual, but when I started it up, it was still messed up. That's when I called tech support and I got with them, and they had me go through the entire procedure again. But the controller was still messed up, so it wouldn't reset, which I don't know if that's what another technician tried to do before, but the controller didn't reset. And if I wouldn't have checked afterwards if it actually reset by going into the program and looking at what the values are and what they're supposed to be, I would not have noticed that. But with the help of tech support, I was able to go through each value independent or individually and
Mm-hmm.
adjust it to what it's supposed to be. So we literally hand adjusted like 30 different values while I was on the phone with them. It took like 10 minutes going through everything.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, we cycled on, like we reset everything, we cycled on power, and it actually solved the problem. It put the unit and the controller into how it's supposed to be. It went into defrost. It turned off the compressor in defrost. So now we were able to melt all the ice and resume operation,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
which at that point it was already later in the day, and they had lost all the product in the unit already, which then it wasn't like a time constraint where you had to get it done, in like within 4 hours. Otherwise, they lose all the product.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to return the next day to check operation. But that's just like why it's important to talk to the customer and find out what's the situation. And also, when you notice something that is off, that shouldn't be the way it is, like dig deeper and find out what is actually going on. Because in my experience, that's one of the main thing that actually separates a more seasoned technician from somebody who's just starting out, because
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's just starting out, they might notice something that's off a little bit, but then they're like, okay, it's still running, and might not investigate further. But somebody who's seasoned, they are like, okay, this is not how it's supposed to be. What's going on? And then they just look into it. Like
Right.
yesterday, one of our calls was a no heat call, and it was a gas heating,
Mm-hmm.
but the unit, it was like an older R22 unit. So already like everything looked like older, but we're like, okay, what's happening? And the blower came on, but nothing else in the gas came on. So we're like, okay, what's going on? The board was telling us everything was good. So we're like, okay, I mean, maybe it's a board, but we just went through all the safeties. We found two of the safeties that were bad, and we bypassed them to see if it's going to run, but it wouldn't run. And then the board wasn't sending the power to the fan motor. So we bypassed that too, and we just had the fan motor run by itself, and it would
Mm-hmm.
still not come on. And we're like, okay, it's just a board. We just have to get a new board. But
Mm-hmm.
that's like how you find out stuff. You like you try to isolate components, and you dig deeper, and you're like, okay, this is the procedure, this is how it's supposed to be. And if it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, then you go deeper and you dig deeper and you isolate components based on what you find, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
anyways, that's how it goes.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun. You never do the same thing twice. I mean, maybe sometimes, but usually you don't.
Right. Oh, that's fun. That's very, very fun. Wow, that's incredible. Well, I like it.
Yeah.
That was challenging, I guess. It's a little bit challenging if you don't know if people have already been there, and then you can't um you have to operate in a different way because if five, six people already been there and they didn't really fix the problem, then there's something else wrong. So I guess the second person who was already there,
So then you wouldn't be there. So
right.
and
Anyways.
then I also wanted to take up another subject because it always annoys me, but sometimes there is no really a way around it. And that's doing some kind of unusual thing to get the customer running and operating. And that's specifically on a heat call that we ran yesterday,
Hmm.
where it just frustrates me because I'm trying to do the right thing. And I
Hmm.
don't know if anybody else ever runs into this, but we had a store that was controlled by building automation, and
Hmm.
those were carrier units that would not activate the fan automatically just based on a heating signal. They required an additional fan run signal from the thermostat, but the building automation was not set up to run the fan in heating. They would just send a heating call and not a fan call. So the heating elements would come on, and obviously there was no airflow and trip because the overheat protection. And I was there at the exact same store with the exact same problem literally last year. And I found out what was going on. And I didn't remember exactly like as I arrived, but the site I arrived and I was like, wow, this looks very familiar. And I went on the roof and I looked at the unit and I was like, I think I've been here before. and then and then I found out that I was there for the exact same call 1 year earlier. And I had written up everything and I went through the exact same troubleshooting procedure. I had written up that they needed to change the building automation. I had called the building automation company and I told them, hey, you need to change those values. You need to send a fan signal during your heat activation because that's just how the units are set up. Like some units control the fan in heat and some don't. So some are, that's why you have a setting on your thermostat where it says unit controls the fan in heat or unit does not control the fan in heat. It's like literally a setting on your thermostat in your house that you can set, that you can program because there's a reason for it. That's why it's there. But what I decided to do is because I went through the same thing and I called carrier tech support and I talked to them. They told me that, yes, you're correct. The units are not designed to operate the fan just based on a heat call. So I went through and I installed a relay. I wish I had it here so I can show you, but it was just a little tiny little relay that is a normally open relay. And I went from W1 terminal on the board, the heating coil. I just went to the coil and to the normally open contact. And then I ran one wire from the coil to the common to close the circuit. And then I ran one wire from the other terminal from the normally open to the fan. So now that what that causes is if you get a heating call, it will activate the relay, which then also gives power to the fan. But in reverse, when you're in cooling and you're having a cooling call and the fan call, it does not send the power to the heat stage, because if you just jump it out, once you get a fan call, your heat will come on all the time. And then you're having problems in the summertime and you get callbacks. So I did that. And then the customer was like, why did we do that? And I was like, well, because I mean, I want to get you heating. Like your store is at 55 degrees or something, and everybody's wearing sweaters and hoodies, and nobody wants to work. So, like, I thought I'm gonna get you heat because I already went through this 1 year ago, and I just called you again, and you told me the same thing. And I don't know really what's going on, but like, either change the settings or I'm gonna give you heat. So I don't like doing that because it's not really the in my opinion, the right way to do it. But sometimes you run into these obstacles where the building automation company can't change the values, but then they have to check with somebody corporate, and then it's like a whole like paper nightmare, and you won't get the result, which is that you want. Like you're providing comfort to the customer, so that's what we're trying to do. And sometimes you have to do these kind of things. I still try to go and do it as best possible, but sometimes that's just what you run into. And I just wanted to bring it up as something that, I mean, I'm frustrated about sometimes, but I just wanted to bring it up as a point that it's something that you might run across, that you might see, and that you have to deal with. So if you come across that, then you might have some kind of insight into how to proceed. That's what I wanted to take up.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. It's very good information. I think all the tips and tricks are very useful, so I found them very amusing. Anyways, that's good. Okay, I guess we're a little bit we're about to run out of time. I don't know if you want to take something else, but that's what we have.
Yeah, no, that's good. We're good.
Okay.
That's what
Okay,
I wanted to take up for today.
okay, cool. Well, that was nice to have this again, and then we'll see you next week on Wednesday, right?
Yes, that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Alrighty then.
Alrighty. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.